The house hunt begins. The aroma of frying bacon wrestled with the sweeter scent of blueberry muffins, a domestic battle Sarah usually won. This morning, however, the bacon reigned supreme, its smoky tendrils wrapping around Matt as he sat at the kitchen island, scrolling through house listings on his phone. "Look at this one, Sarah. 3 bedrooms, huge backyard, perfect for, well, you know." He winked, a playful glint in his eyes. Sarah, humming along to the radio, flipped a muffin with a spatula. "A dog? Or maybe a trampoline for us big kids?" Matt chuckled, but his gaze remained glued to the screen. "Both, obviously. And a garden. You always wanted a garden." "As long as you promise to actually help tend to it," Sarah countered, placing the muffin on a plate. "No more, honey, I'm too tired from work." "Deal," Matt said, perhaps a little too quickly. "So, what are you thinking? Cape Cod? Modern farmhouse? Something with character?" He knew Sarah loved houses with stories etched into their walls. Sarah leaned against the counter, considering. "Character is good, but I also want something practical. Good bones, minimal renovations needed. Remember the disaster with your apartment?" Matt visibly winced. "Let's not relive the great bathroom tile debacle of 2022, please." The GPS announced their arrival at Walker Realty, your key to home. Matt swallowed nervously as Sarah parked the car. He smoothed down his shirt, suddenly feeling underdressed. The office was all glass and chrome, sunlight glinting off the polished surfaces. A sleek, modern aesthetic, a far cry from the cozy cottage he'd envisioned for their future. Sarah pushed open the door, a bell tinkling cheerfully overhead. "Mom. We're here." A woman emerged from a back office, her smile wide and dazzling. Carol Walker, Sarah's mother. Matt's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Carol was even more striking than he remembered. Her blonde hair was perfectly coiffed, her figure trim in a tailored navy suit. "Sarah, darling. So glad you're here. And you must be Matt." Her eyes flicked over him, assessing, a subtle scrutiny he couldn't quite decipher. "It's great to finally meet you properly, Mrs. Walker," Matt stammered, extending his hand. "Carol, please." "Mrs. Walker makes me sound ancient," she said, her smile unwavering but somehow, sharp. Her grip was firm, almost too firm, and lingered a fraction longer than necessary. "So, you're the lucky man who's finally convinced my Sarah to settle down." Sarah, oblivious to the undercurrents swirling in the room, beamed. "Mom's going to find us the perfect place. She knows all the best spots." Carol squeezed Sarah's arm. "Of course, darling. Only the best for my girl. Now, let's talk houses, shall we?" She steered them towards a conference table, the air thick with forced pleasantries and unspoken tensions. The hunt had begun. Familiar faces, unexpected sparks. "And this," Carol proclaimed, sweeping a lacquered fingernail towards the expansive living room, "is where the magic happens. Or, you know, movie nights." Sunlight poured through the outsized windows, revealing a ballet of dust motes pirouetting in the golden shafts. Matt trailed Sarah and Carol inside. Ever the pragmatist, Sarah was already appraising the fireplace, her fingers tracing the weathered bricks. Original to the house, Carol volunteered, her attention laser-focused on Matt. 1928, possesses a certain warmth, don't you think? Matt felt his throat constrict, a sudden flush prickling his skin. "Definitely," he squeaked, his voice betraying his unease. He struggled to concentrate on the room, on the potential the property offered, but Carol's presence buzzed around him, a subtle energy that made his senses hum. He'd never truly registered Sarah's mother before. She was arresting. Polished, with a keen intelligence that sparked in her gaze. "I selected this property specifically," Carol confided, her voice a velvet murmur, "because I sensed you two possessed, refined sensibilities." A pregnant pause followed. I trust my hunches. Matt shuffled, catching Sarah's unburdened grin. It's a perfect house, Mom. Thanks for arranging this. They proceeded through the rest of the residence, Carol's running commentary a blend of real estate vernacular and veiled innuendo aimed squarely at Matt. The kitchen craves a modern touch, naturally, but imagine the possibilities, she murmured, her hand briefly gracing his arm as she gestured towards the space begging for a breakfast bar. Later, in the master suite, she remarked on the ample closet space, adding, plenty of room for shared activities. He found himself nodding along, agreeing with her observations, his mind a chaotic churn. Was he imagining this? Was Carol actually flirting? The notion seemed preposterous, unthinkable. Yet, the intensity of her gaze, the subtle emphasis she gave certain phrases, the lingering brushes, they all felt calculated. This is Sarah's mother, he reminded himself, the thought like a splash of ice water. Sarah, who trusts me implicitly. The weight of that confidence pressed down on him, a stifling burden beneath Carol's undeniable magnetism. He yearned for a distraction, a way to diffuse the tension escalating with each room they entered. He needed to escape this house, to flee Carol's knowing smile and the unsettling tremor in his chest. He wished Sarah would notice, would perceive the current that crackled between him and her mother, but she remained gloriously oblivious, her eyes sparkling with dreams of their future nestled within these walls. A future he was now beginning to doubt. Lights out. The lights flickered, a hesitant strobe against the pristine white walls of the master bedroom. Carol's spiel about the ensuite jacuzzi was cut short with a final, definitive blink. Darkness swallowed the room. Well, isn't this cozy? Carol quipped, her voice a touch too bright. Guess we blew a fuse. Matt chuckled nervously. Probably just a temporary thing. He fumbled for his phone, the screen illuminating his anxious face. No signal. Of course. I'll check the breaker box, Carol announced, already moving with a surprising agility in the dark. Matt, be a dear and see if you can find a flashlight. Should be one in the kitchen drawer. He nodded, already feeling the familiar pang of inadequacy. Why hadn't he thought of that? He stumbled out of the bedroom, arms outstretched, navigating by memory. The hallway was a black abyss. He bumped into a small table, sending a ceramic vase crashing to the floor. Everything all right? Carol called from somewhere down the hall. Fine. Just, fine, he muttered, his cheeks burning. The kitchen was no better. He groped along the countertop, knocking over a spice rack in his search for the drawer. Finally, his fingers brushed against cool metal. He yanked it open, revealing an array of utensils but no flashlight. Panic began to bubble in his chest. Can't find it, he yelled, his voice cracking slightly. Damn, Carol said, appearing in the doorway, a sliver of moonlight outlining her figure. All right, stay here. I think I saw one in the laundry room earlier. She disappeared again, leaving Matt alone in the oppressive darkness. He leaned against the counter, trying to calm his racing heart. The silence was thick, broken only by the faint creaks of the old house settling. He imagined Sarah's disapproval if she were here, her disappointment in his uselessness. Carol returned, the beam of a flashlight cutting through the gloom. She shone it on Matt, her expression unreadable. Found it. Though I expected a bit more initiative, Matt. He flinched at the subtle barb. The air in the small kitchen felt suddenly charged. Carol moved closer, the flashlight beam now directed at the floor. He could smell her perfume, a heady mix of jasmine and something sharper, more exotic. The shadows danced on her face, highlighting the curve of her cheekbone, the fullness of her lips. He swallowed hard. She tilted her head, her gaze meeting his in the dim light. A strange smile played on her lips. The moment stretched, taut and silent. He knew he should look away, say something, anything, but he was frozen, caught in the magnetic pull of her presence. He leaned in, drawn by an impulse he couldn't control. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, then blazed back to life, flooding the room with harsh fluorescent light. Carol stepped back abruptly, her expression now carefully neutral. "Well," she said, her voice regaining its professional composure. "That's sorted then." Hidden messages. Matt's phone vibrated against his thigh as they headed for the car. He risked a glance. "Carol." A winking emoji and the message, "Hope you liked the place, handsome." A wave of nausea mixed with something akin to excitement churned within him. He jammed the phone back into his pocket, heat prickling his skin. "Everything all right?" Sarah's voice held a thread of concern, her brow knit together. "Fine. Work stuff," he mumbled, fumbling with the car key. He sensed her eyes lingering, speculative. The drive transformed into Sarah's soliloquy on shades of eggshell and sofa placements. Matt punctuated her enthusiasm with absent-minded affirmations, his thoughts a tangled mess of guilt and illicit pleasure. Carol's text was a forbidden sweet, a secret savor despite the bitter aftertaste. Later, Sarah, sprawled on the sofa, navigated the treacherous waters of mortgage rates. Matt feigned interest in a baseball game, yet his muted, inverted phone held his captive gaze. Another message chimed, "Thinking about that spacious master bathroom, picturing you in there." His throat constricted. This was wrong. Utterly, irrevocably wrong. Confession was the only path. Block her number. But the image Carol painted was a vivid, disturbing temptation. "Hey, could you get me some water, please?" Sarah's request pulled him back. "Sure thing," he replied, his voice betraying his inner turmoil. He practically fled to the kitchen, phone clutched in hand. He reread Carol's texts, drawn in by a perverse gravity. The words were a goad, a test of his crumbling resolve. Returning with the water, he placed it on the table. Sarah looked up, offering a weary smile. "Thanks, sweetie. You're the best." Her words landed like a blow. He was a fraud, a cheat, a coward cloaked in domesticity. But as he settled beside her, enveloped in her comforting presence, his phone buzzed again. This time, he ignored it, shoving it deeper into the abyss of his pocket, the vibration a persistent, irritating tremor. The fragrance of her lavender lotion swam around him, cloying and suffocating. The game flickered before him, a kaleidoscope of meaningless motion. He felt a rising tide of sickness. Confessions and kisses. The house on Willow Creek Drive smelled faintly of potpourri and unfulfilled potential. Carol led them through the overly staged living room, pointing out crown molding and the natural light that streamed weakly through the sheer curtains. Sarah, ever practical, was already peering into closets, muttering about storage space. "Why don't you two check out the backyard?" Carol suggested, her voice a little too sweet, her gaze lingering a moment too long on Matt. "I need to make a quick call about paperwork." Matt hesitated, glancing at Sarah, who was now inspecting the dubious grout in the downstairs bathroom. "Sure, sounds good." The backyard was small and overgrown, a jungle of weeds and forgotten gardening tools. As soon as they were out of sight of the house, Carol turned to him, her smile gone, replaced by something sharper, more calculating. "Matt," she began, her voice low and husky, "I need to be honest with you." He swallowed, suddenly acutely aware of the warmth radiating from her body, the floral perfume that clung to the air around her. "Okay. I find you incredibly attractive," she said, her eyes locked on his. "I know it's inappropriate, and I probably shouldn't be saying this, but..." She stepped closer, her hand reaching out to touch his arm. "I can't help myself." Panic flared in Matt's chest. He was dating her daughter. This was insane. He should stop this. But her touch was electrifying, her eyes promising something dangerous and thrilling. He opened his mouth to protest, but no sound came out. Carol's fingers trailed up his arm, her nails lightly scraping his skin. "Don't say anything," she whispered. "Just, feel." She leaned in, her lips brushing against his. He knew he should pull away, should run, should tell Sarah everything. But he was frozen, caught in the intoxicating web of Carol's desire. Her lips were soft, insistent, and then suddenly, demanding. He kissed her back. The kiss was deep, urgent, a desperate collision of need and forbidden pleasure. Matt felt a surge of guilt, but it was quickly drowned out by the rising tide of lust. He pulled away, breathless, his heart pounding against his ribs. Carol's eyes were dark and hungry. That, she said, her voice a shaky whisper, was inevitable. Matt stumbled back, horrified by his own weakness, by the raw, undeniable attraction he felt for Sarah's mother. Near Mississippi. The front door clicked open, a sound that sliced through the air like a dropped cymbal. Matt and Carol sprang apart as if jolted by an electric shock. The lingering scent of Carol's perfume, a heady mix of jasmine and sandalwood, hung heavy in the air. Sarah stood in the entryway, a reusable grocery bag slung over her shoulder. "Forgot my laptop charger," she announced, her voice echoing slightly in the sudden silence. Her gaze flicked between Matt and her mother, a flicker of confusion creasing her brow. "Everything all right?" Matt's heart hammered against his ribs. "Yeah, fine. Just, admiring the view." He gestured vaguely towards the window, which overlooked the manicured lawn. Carol, ever the professional, recovered quickly. "We were just discussing the structural integrity of the foundation." "Fascinating stuff, really." She offered Sarah a bright, slightly too wide smile. Sarah didn't seem convinced. She stepped further into the house, her eyes narrowed slightly. The air crackled with unspoken tension. "The foundation? In the living room?" She raised an eyebrow, her gaze lingering on Matt. He could feel the heat rising in his cheeks. "Right," Carol interjected smoothly. "Just a preliminary assessment. Always good to be thorough, you know." She moved towards Sarah, attempting to steer her towards the stairs. "Let's get your charger, honey. I'm sure you're eager to get back to work." As Sarah brushed past Matt, she paused, her eyes searching his. "You seem flustered," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "Is something wrong, Matt?" He forced a smile, trying to project an air of nonchalance he didn't feel. "Just excited about the house, that's all. It's a big decision." He hoped his voice didn't betray him. Sarah continued to study him for a moment longer, her expression unreadable. Then, with a small shrug, she turned and followed her mother upstairs, the click of her heels a steady drumbeat against the hardwood. Matt stood frozen in the living room, the weight of his near miss pressing down on him. He could still taste Carol's lipstick on his lips, a dangerous reminder of the line he had almost crossed. He needed to get out of this house, away from Carol's magnetic pull. But how could he explain that to Sarah? He was trapped. The truth revealed. The weight in Matt's chest had become unbearable, a leaden anchor dragging him down. Each shared laugh with Sarah, each loving glance, felt like a fresh betrayal. He replayed the scene in his head 1,000 times, the open house, the shock of seeing Evelyn, Sarah's mother, as the realtor, the subtle flirtation he hadn't discouraged. How could he have been so stupid? So weak? He found Sarah in the garden, sunlight catching in her hair as she pruned the rose bushes. The scent of earth and blossoms hung heavy in the air, a stark contrast to the sickness churning in his stomach. He watched her for a long moment, admiring the way her brow furrowed in concentration, the gentle curve of her smile. He loved her. He really did. And that made what he'd done even worse. "Sarah," he began, his voice barely a whisper. She turned, her smile widening. "Hey, you. Everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." He swallowed hard. I need to tell you something. Something about the open house." Her expression shifted, a flicker of concern in her eyes. "The house we want?" He nodded, unable to meet her gaze. He focused on the worn flagstones at his feet, each crack a testament to time and endurance, qualities he suddenly felt he lacked. "It's about your mother." The words hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. Sarah's smile vanished completely. "My mother? What about her?" He blurted it out, the truth spilling from him like a dam breaking. "She was the realtor. Evelyn. And I knew her. I'd met her before, a while ago." He skipped the details of that meeting, but the implication was there. Sarah stared at him, her face pale. You knew my mother was the realtor, and you didn't tell me?" Her voice was dangerously quiet. "I panicked," he pleaded, hating the sound of his own desperation. "I didn't know what to do. I was afraid of what you'd think." "Afraid?" Her voice rose, cracking with disbelief. "Afraid of what I'd think? You lied to me, Matt. You let me talk about buying a house from my own mother without saying a word." She stepped back as if he had physically struck her, and the scent of roses was replaced by the bitter tang of betrayal. "How could you?" Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the perfect image he so desperately wanted to preserve. I thought I was protecting you," he stammered, knowing even as he said it how hollow it sounded. "Protecting me?" A sob escaped her lips. "From what, Matt? From the truth?" She shook her head, the sunlight glinting off the tears streaming down her face. "I don't even know you." Showdown at the house. The slam of the front door reverberated in the unnervingly still house, a stark punctuation to her exit. Matt was in the kitchen, a solitary figure wrestling with the espresso machine, shoulders tense. Carol's perfume, usually a comforting note, now hung in the air like a suffocating shroud. What was all that about? Sarah's question sliced through the quiet, sharper than intended. Matt flinched, nearly fumbling the coffee filter. "Whoa! You startled me." "What do you mean?" "Don't feign ignorance, Matt. My mother. The way she was, eyeing you. The way you, reciprocated." He stuttered, "She's just, affable. She's a realtor, Sarah, it's her job to turn on the charm." Charm? Or something more insidious? Her gaze darted to the living room threshold where Carol stood, a statue sculpted from culpability and couture. "Mom. Any explanations for me?" Carol advanced slowly, her composure cracking like fragile porcelain. "Darling, please, let me try to explain." "Explain what?" "How you were practically flirting with my boyfriend in our prospective home. Explain how you made me feel like an interloper in some private charade." Sarah's voice trembled. Matt recoiled, his face losing all color. The robust scent of brewing coffee did little to dispel the charged atmosphere. Carol's carefully maintained facade crumbled completely. Tears coursed down her cheeks, blurring her meticulously applied makeup. It was a lapse, a dreadful, unforgivable lapse. It began, innocently enough. Just light-hearted banter. But then, it spiraled. "I'm mortified, Sarah. I am so sorry." Spiraled? What does that even entail, Mom? Did you? The question choked in her throat, the unspoken words a palpable weight. The clinically clean kitchen suddenly felt like a pressure chamber. Carol wept, shaking her head vehemently. "No. Nothing physical, I swear. But the attention, the validation. I haven't felt desired like that in ages. It was wrong, terribly wrong, and I should have put a stop to it. I never intended to wound you, sweetheart." Sarah stared, a wave of bitter realization washing over her. The woman she'd always revered, the poised, accomplished Carol Walker, was reduced to this blubbering wreck. And Matt, the man she believed she loved, stood paralyzed, utterly useless. Turning to him, Sarah's voice was flat, devoid of all feeling. "I think you should go." He began to formulate a protest, but the chilling resolve in her eyes silenced him. He snatched his jacket and keys, his movements clumsy and disjointed. As he passed Carol, he offered a feeble, "I'm sorry," before vanishing through the doorway. The ensuing silence was profound, punctuated only by Carol's muffled sobs. Sarah knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that the house, the future she had painstakingly imagined with Matt, and perhaps something even more essential with her mother, had dissolved into ruin. The illusion of a perfect existence lay in fragments, scattered among the pristine surfaces and gleaming appliances. Aftermath and new beginnings. The silence in the Walker house had finally been replaced, not with forced pleasantries, but with the comfortable murmur of shared memories. Months had passed since the explosion, months of raw honesty and tear-soaked therapy sessions between Sarah and Carol. The real estate brochures were gone, replaced by photo albums and board games. They were learning to be mother and daughter again, not just two women navigating a complicated business transaction. "Remember that time I tried to bake a cake for your birthday and set off the smoke alarm?" Sarah asked, a genuine smile gracing her lips. Carol chuckled, "How could I forget? The fire department still sends me Christmas cards." Sarah squeezed her mother's hand. "I'm really glad we're here, Mom. Really glad we're talking." Meanwhile, miles away, Matt stared at the chipped paint on his apartment wall. The "For Rent" sign mocked him from across the street. He'd lost Sarah, his job, and most of his friends. The whispers followed him, the guy who slept with his girlfriend's mother. He tried to explain, to justify his actions as a lapse in judgment, a moment of weakness fueled by Carol's undeniable allure and his own crippling need to please, but the words always sounded hollow, even to himself. He was adrift, a small boat unmoored in a storm. One crisp autumn afternoon, Sarah found herself at a local bookstore, browsing the travel section. A hand reached for the same guide to Iceland she was eyeing. "Planning an adventure?" a warm voice inquired. She turned to see a man with kind eyes and a disarming smile. "Maybe," she replied, still in the daydreaming phase. His name was Ben, a photographer with a passion for capturing the raw beauty of the world. They talked for hours, about glaciers and geysers, about chasing the northern lights and the thrill of the unknown. He didn't know anything about her past, about Matt or Carol, and that was a relief. With Ben, she was just Sarah, a woman with a thirst for life and a heart slowly healing. Matt picked up his phone, scrolling through Sarah's Instagram. He saw a picture of her laughing, her arm around a man he didn't recognize, the Icelandic landscape stretching behind them like a promise of a future he would never share. A pang of regret, sharp and bitter, pierced through the numbness. He had traded genuine connection for fleeting validation, and now he was left with nothing but the echoing silence of his own choices.